The scene is set within Nobility Hill, the Prince's domain. John Stanhope, after his uncharacteristic physical exertion at the Elysium, feels a little peckish, and so decides to hunt for the evening. This form of hunting is perhaps very different from other kindreds, and as his own decree limits him to his domain, it is a good thing that he is the prince, and can issue domain as he will, but not wanting to antagonize subjects, he keeps within Nobility Hill the domain recognized and given to him by the former prince, Lysander Eudocia. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll, and then I'll describe what John does. He is a social kindred more than a hunter, so he'll be rolling his charisma and subterfuge. Or manipulation, subterfuge, if people prefer. Exactly the same dice pool. He has herd, which increases his dice pool, and he has domain. Now, as much as I'd love to give him domain 5, because now he's prince, we'll keep domain 3, which will make a DC of 5, since Nobility Hill is pretty difficult to hunt in normally. Only a light snack today. 3 successes, which means his blood pool is now from 5 to 8. John Stanhope enjoys hunting in Nobility Hill. It is a place that suits his needs greatly. Unlike the historic district or the gated communities, most of the residents within Nobility Hill are up-and-comers. They're new money. They're people who have broken their first million. People who have got the better-paying job, working that glorious promotion in New Sarum, and it is the first place I go to. The community itself is very high class, insular in a snobbish way, and cliquish. It is using that clique that John enjoys his domain so much. It didn't take him long to secure it. He attends some of the PTA meetings and some of the neighborhood watch campaigns, the local get-togethers of the housing association within the neighborhood in which he makes residence. He marks off potentials for his own habits and curiosities that might work towards a more commercial vitae. The way he does this is he goes and puts little calligraphied invitations to his famous wine evenings. John does enjoy wine. He always did in his mortal days, and he keeps up to date with the new vineyards and tastes of the kind world. It is his ipfacto cover when trying to play less of royalty and more of the willing servant. And the community has taken to it. In the lobby of his apartment building, you can see neighbors swan around, using it as to size up the competition, to be able to match themselves against their neighbors. Who's richer, who has what appliance, who has the best looking wife, who has the largest house, who is just building an extension, who drives the fanciest car. The American dream. That is what John enjoys about America. Because it's not about who you were born, it's what you can do, it's how much money you make. Money is the royalty of America. And it's so fickle. So fickle. Money rises to those who do not deserve it and drops like the pin of a hat. The markets fluctuate, people make poor decisions. And so they get greedy. They get greedy and they tightly hold on to what they have, and they always, always want more. The spark of ambition is always prevalent in Americans. It is their dream to rise from the dirt and be someone. John's always appreciated that about the New World. He mingles amongst the crowd, shaking hands and making a smile. If anyone asks, his role within the city is a very minor one. He, his family, and a pretty penny with some vineyards in England, and he himself simply is enjoying the high life. Occasionally taking parties and studying at the university. He had his knowledge of medicine also helps to get him in with some of the unprofessional-minded who believe someone's worth is only through their job. His works of charity help him also get in with the mother groups and the busybodies, the Christian organizations. All these wonderful little social groups all want John to be part of their party. He was generous with his money. He was charming, efficient, and harmless. The poor, crippled old man, well, middle-aged man, I should say. John isn't as cartoonish as Lachlan when it comes to his supposed inferiority. He swans around the crowd and lights them all with the various wines on display, and cheeses and breads, small nibbles created by some of his staff, nothing that required too much effort, but appreciated nonetheless. It was all about the wine. All about the wine, and John salivated at the thought of drinking it. He only picked the best for his vessels after all. But how to pick of so many? His eyes turn from an ice blue to a more subtle swirling shade of grey as he scans the perplexes with his Auspex, trying to keep out that beautiful colour, that aroma that his targets always exude. Sometimes he goes for something similar. Jealousy, for instance, is often a good emotion to target in on his feeding preference. He swans up to an elderly, well, a middle-aged man, very thick of girth and strong chin, head shaved, very conservative dress. He has a slight waif of a wife, probably about half his age. Perfect. John slips in with easy conversation, joining in and making sure to ask the right questions, to gawk and to admire the man when he lists off his pitiful accomplishments. This is a simple case of persuasion. To see a marvel John has, is trying to find which marvel to tempt them with. That is the difficulty. Is it a new car? Is it a garage? Is it something, a workshop, a piece of art? The right lie needs to be coaxed out of them. But it doesn't take long. Just a bit of patience. A bit of working on your meal. Eventually they'll let it slip, that one interest in which they speak with a higher tone, with that enthusiasm which they ask about, or latch on to conversations which they are talking. Tonight, this gentleman, well, for all his pomp and circumstance, is very low-born. he enjoys simple things of his youth back in some down street in Chicago or whatever. The lie is simple. It's so simple John even laughs. It's a pinball machine. John chose this particular curio as the man speaks of social interaction in today's youth, that they didn't appreciate good entertainment. His story is often formulated on a ice cream stall, bar, shop, whatever the Americans call it nowadays, that harnessed a sort of daycare for the kiddies, and how he enjoyed that time. Man takes little persuasion, and if they need a little extra push, well, that's what Dominate's for. Heading upstairs towards the private suites, making sure that no one follows them, of course, John slips him into a room. This room is bare. There's no furniture, there's very little about it. In fact, this entire apartment is used for this particular purpose, and John feels no need to decorate it so. But it has something essential. Medical equipment. A quick word and a whisper, and the man is frozen still. At which point John takes out a syringe within his pocket, drawing the blood within it, while the man stands still, comatose. You can't be too careful, even in this part of town. Places it on a microscope. Tastes a small drop, swirls it around his mouth. No more talk than any real merit, but you'll do for this evening. As John makes the man plug himself in, and lets the machine work. John has rules to run interference if his wife decides to come along, although looking the fat, balding man over, he doubts it. It's been a while since John's had to hunt this way. He usually takes his vitae from the bottles or on dinner nights with Calliope. She made hunting a little easier. No longer this farce with this equipment, with the syringes, with trying and managing all these different numbers and kind. No, she can make up for his deficiency, some strange lack of the embrace that prevented him from closing wounds like other kindred. Or something like his leg he felt was wrong with him. A deformity, a mistake, evidence of his poor bloodline. But he learnt to adapt. Hell, he made a living out of adapting. If it wasn't the case, would he have ever fallen into the blood trade? Would he have ever risen so high with the new serum by selling his craft? Who knows? Makes you wonder, John said, to the man who was clearly woozing, whether we are truly the masters of our own destiny. Nature-nurture, I suppose. Am I successful because I will it and I have the ambition for it? Or is it simply an accident that I was made this way through my upbringing? Well, it matters not. John unhooks the syringe, saying that quite a generous bag has been taken. Well, it's time for us to bring you back to the party. John leans over, staring the man in the eyes and fabricating a wonderful evening. John's eidetic memory and flair for the dramatic helps him in these instances, for he can describe in a vivid detail the room he wishes this man to see. This rec room, a games room of flashing lights and nostalgic 1980s posters of varying films. That the two played a few rounds of the ball, then uncorked a bottle of very fine whiskey, drank the swilling sensation. John describes in immaculate detail how the liquid poured over the man's tongue, cementing the memory. John has discovered through numerous practice that details like smells and tastes stick more within the mind and adapt quickly to dominate than do simple visual commands. And as such, he picks up the man, dusts him off, spins him round and sends him on his way, putting on his best charming smile and laughing at a joke that the man never made, but he'll remember that he did, and heading back into the party. Half an hour or so later, John will return to that room and drink greedily. Not much at all. And then goes the petty business in which he tries to every night, of sampling the flavours from his neighbourhood. This was a little simpler than the actual extraction, but the process is the same. Get them alone, take a draught with his syringe, try it, see if it's to his taste or at least has a flavour that's maybe worth pursuing, writing it down, getting their details, and then sending them on their way, to be called another night, whether to be crafted, given a fine food, or, well, give them an evening they're not expecting. And tailor it slowly. In evenings like this, when John looks down on the party, he begins to understand what he does for a living. He's growing. He is a true winemaker of the most difficult wine. A herdsman, perhaps, a shepherd, seeing them all run around their little lives, slowly nudging them this way and that. It doesn't matter if it takes years, decades even, because sometimes the greatest vintage is the one that you have to prune and shape and allow to grow in a certain way. Usually John doesn't have to be that forceful, doesn't have to use dominate, just little hints here and there. He's quite well spoken. Mentioning a man's weight is always a good one. Mentioning that you have a new personal gym. Another one to make the beer gut disappear and get them to eat a healthier variety of foods. For the women, well, John must take a bit more of a subtle tone, often finding their clique of friends, influencing them, allowing them to come to their own decision. Mentioning authors that he's read, or TV shows, or interesting subjects or dissertations that he's read recently. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't, just pebbles in the ocean. Sometimes those pebbles skim and go on. And he can taste with every evening a tiny little drop and weigh it, consider it, think how to improve it. He should do this more often. It's been too long since he's just simply enjoyed himself and what he does. Sometimes time with the kind makes one reflect, away from the politics, away from the backstabbing and the constant watching of one's words. Kind are just so wonderfully gullible. Tonight has been a good evening. The phone call from Cole was not unexpected. But John's interested to see how the sheriff handles things. He doesn't want to antagonize the Anarchs this early on, especially since John hasn't heard from his own sources what's going on yet. No. We'll see if Mr. Cole has a light touch, see if he can put the message across forcefully, but not threateningly. And see if they listen. That's what John's most interested in. Do people listen to Cole? Or are they just afraid of him? We will all find out soon. John heads back upstairs when the party winds down. He makes his rounds and shakes some hands. Samples a bare 3 this evening. He's more on cruise control. Not in any great rush to create anything. And just trying a few vintages that he thinks might catch his eye. In all fairness, this particular avenue of the neighborhood doesn't seem to have that many people to his palate. But that can change. People can be cultivated, and it never harms to widen one's stock.